Hey, it's Liz D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Elizabeth D'Alto here with a quick announcement and special invitation for you before we get into today's episode. If you've been listening to the podcast for the past several weeks, you've heard me mention that I am currently filling a 6-month mentorship that'll start in January and run through June in 2016. It's called the Untame Yourself Women's Leadership Council, and I just wanted to take a moment before the show today to give you a little more information in case you've been thinking about applying, wondering if you should apply, and would like to know, is this something that you could personally benefit from in 2016? So to give you an idea of the type of women that are applying and what women really seem to have in common is a lot of transitions. I'm getting a lot of women applying for the mentorship who are either transitioning in careers, in relationships, or going through transitions of their kids being young, and now they're a little more old and are having time and space to do more things for themselves. So a lot of transitions are coming together in the group. I'm also noticing a lot of women who are ambivalent in relationships, who are wondering if they should be in a certain relationship, not in a certain relationship. And of course, women who are desiring to connect more to their own femininity, to really learn to trust, love, and accept themselves, know who they are, and really develop a strong personal identity if for whatever reason in their life, they just don't feel like they have one. They don't feel super connected to themselves, their own personal truth, their power, or their soul. And also to give you an idea of the women I'm accepting, man, it's been so cool to see how many women have a real laundry list of things that they're just sick and tired of, that they're super fed up with, and have finally come to a place where they're ready to deal with it. They're super scared. They don't necessarily know how to do it on their own, and they don't necessarily have a support system. And so a lot of women I'm accepting are super excited to have the support system, to have a mentor, and to have a guide as they navigate these struggles and these challenges. I'm also noticing there's a lot of women who are just ready. They are ready to take these things head on finally, and they're no longer willing to silently suffer or struggle, or to pretend that these things aren't happening, or to let them go unresolved in their lives. So if you want to apply, you can go to untameyourself.com/mentorship. And I'll share one more thing with you. The process of filling out the application alone is worth the experience, because the questions I put on that application aren't just questions that help me figure out whether or not I'd want to invite you to the mentorship, but they're probably also questions that knowing the answers to would be really valuable and useful for you to get clear on going into 2016. Some of these are questions that you're probably not asking yourself, and it's super useful to even just go through the experience of filling out the application. So don't count yourself out. Don't think you need to be any kind of special type of person, certain kind of person. If you have any of the issues, if you have any of the struggles or any of the desires that I already described and mentioned, go ahead and fill out that application at untameyourself.com/mentorship. I'll be taking applications through December 30th only, and I will be wrapping up interviews in the first week of January. So don't miss out on an experience because you're feeling scared or nervous. If you feel any kind of tug, fill out that application, and I can't wait to speak with you. Now for today's show. Elizabeth D'Alto here, your host for the Untamed, the Wild Soul Woman podcast. And today, our wild woman is my friend, Jessi Kneeland. She is the owner and operator at jessikneeland.com. She is a fitness coach. She has been a super top personal trainer in New York City. And I'm super excited to chat with her. One of the reasons I invited her, especially in the last few months, Jessi's been spending a lot of time talking about nakedness and what it means, you know, from the perspective of a human who, so you can't see her. If you're watching, you can see her, but she's like wearing a sweater, you can't tell. And if you're listening, you can't see her. But our friend Sarah recently described it as Jessi's body looks like a human anatomy chart. So, and you know, who knows? I don't know if that has always been the case. We'll talk about it when we get there. But she just has such a cool perspective on fitness, on body love, and on everything related to those things. So I'm super excited to chat today. Thank you for being here, Jessi.
Thanks for having me.
So you may or may not know the first question that I ask all the guests, but here we go. What do you love about being a woman?
Wow. What do I love about being a woman? I feel like that's a very loaded question. So I'm going to just go with the fact that I get to help other women because I am a woman. That is what I love about it.
Cool. What feels loaded about the question to you?
I haven't really liked being female for most of my life,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think that this is like kind of a new thing for me, where I'm like
Mm.
embracing the fact that by being a woman, I'm in a unique position to help other women because I feel like I have a bit of a different perspective on it.
I want to hear more about this because I also didn't enjoy being a
Uh,
woman for most of my year. Like this is for me, it's relatively new and like within the decade, I started to be like, all right, this is kind of cool. But
mhm.
most of my life that was not the case either. So say more about that.
Okay, so I know that this is kind of a common story, but feeling like sort of a tomboy growing up, that kind of thing. I didn't do anything athletic, but in terms of like adventure-y stuff, like mindset, I felt like most of the girls all had this mindset of limitation. So all the rules that you put on girls, I felt like they didn't really apply to me. And then, of course, yeah, as I'm sure you know, the less that rules apply to you in your own head, the less they actually apply anywhere else, because that's the only place they really exist. So I felt like, it's just such a bummer. I wasn't a boy. Like, I felt like I could have just, I don't know, it just, they got to do all the cool stuff, and like they get hormones, they get to like go crush stuff, and like the best girls can do is like be soft and gentle. It just didn't seem like nearly as much fun. But yeah, I think I've really come around through a lot of very dedicated exploration. Some of it through your recommendation, actually, 2 years ago now, with Kim and Ami. So that was one of the first things I did that helped shift my perspective around, like, okay, maybe this isn't like a bummer. Maybe this is actually an extraordinary gift. But yeah, so I've done a lot of work to embrace it, and I think a big part of it is having that mindset, and being a woman is awesome because I get to help other women get there.
Yeah, yeah. So
If I
tell
were a guy,
me,
then that really wouldn't work.
yeah, what's interesting? So I've seen men who coach women. But and right, and there are women who coach men around stuff, but especially around like body stuff, or it just seems so interesting to me as a woman. I personally, it would be a trust issue, and I just like wouldn't be.
Hmm.
I guess maybe because when I choose teachers, leaders, guides, mentors, I choose people based on them having what I want.
Mm.
And so, in the realm of
You
anything to
know,
do with the body, I wouldn't really be jazzed to work with a man.
yeah, I think that's an interesting thing about how people choose, someone to guide or lead them in some way. And I would all has what I want, but that's also kind of a recent thing. And I think for a long time, I would choose people who in no way overlapped with what I wanted, so that it felt like an impartial source. And sometimes I think when women are choosing, like, especially as trainers, like with the body stuff, when they choose a male trainer, they can't choose anyone with overlap because that's painful. There's a lot of pain there, even if it's like maybe jealousy or feeling insecure or something that doesn't feel good. Whereas with a guy, there's none of that. You're an impartial person who knows about stuff, and you can listen to them without any of that pain. So I think in some ways it's a very specific choice when women choose male guides.
Yeah, what an interesting point there too, right? With the overlap, so it's almost like a built-in mechanism to not have to go too deep.
Wow, I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah.
Maybe, maybe not.
It could be. I mean, I think it keeps you from hitting those points, which sometimes you're not ready to go to, right? So it's
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
there's no judgment on whether
No, no,
or not
no.
you want to go, but there is, like, you get a free pass out of them, because that person is never going to look you in the eyes and say, "I know what you're doing here. I know what this is." They're going to
Yeah.
go, "Well, I don't know. Well, good luck."
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe, or again, but also always, I always like to, play both sides.
Hmm.
But also maybe not, because what if it just gives people the opportunity to actually not be distracted by comparison or judging themselves because they don't look like their trainer or whatever. So it seems like there would be gifts in both. And again, this is specific to,
One of my dearest friends worked and said something. Yeah. Oh wait, you're cutting in and out.
yeah, you were too
Ooh,
for a second.
frozen.
Are you back? Are we paused?
You're frozen. Shit. Oh, now you're back.
We're
Can you hear
back?
me? Yes.
Okay, cool. So I was finishing, we just got cut off there for a second. I probably won't even edit it out, maybe. But I was finishing saying that maybe it's cool because people won't compare themselves. And you were starting to say something about a friend of yours with an experience.
Oh yeah, so a dear friend of mine, and I had said something once, like what you mentioned, a trust issue. For me, I just don't want a guy all up in my body, like telling me what to do with it and how to feel it. I don't know. It just would have been my thing in choosing a trainer. And she was making the argument that with the way that he guides her, it feels like she trusts him more
Oh, interesting.
because, yeah, like there just was like an air that a lot of women, female trainers don't have of like, I know how to help you because that's, it's not how we're taught to present. And a lot of us don't feel comfortable sort of really taking the reins and guiding someone with that much confidence. So for her, it was simply an issue of he makes me feel trusted. And it's really important that he makes me trust him. It's really important that someone is like guiding me because that's what
Yeah,
I need.
and they feel safe, right? And I am
Mm-hmm.
sure some women probably feel safer. God, there's so many. What a fun conversation this is evolving into because of all the layers, right? Like this even brings up
Mm-hmm.
this whole societal issue of like women not trusting women, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have had experience like that. I don't necessarily think that's the direction I want to take the conversation, but how interesting that we've touched on it. So
Totally.
I do want to talk though more about nakedness. You
Awesome.
wrote something in a blog post, and we'll definitely find that blog post and link it up in the show notes about society's view of nakedness being so skewed because bodies, especially the female body, is so sexualized. So it's nearly impossible to just have like a female body and not have it associated with sex. People like just lose their minds when someone posts a naked picture. It's like it's not just about being like naked. It's not just like exhibitionist. So tell me, you've been posting like yoga pictures. You posted a picture. You had your body painted. I want to know about that experience. So this is the rabbit hole I want to dive into. Start wherever you
Cool.
want.
Okay, yeah. So the two main points that my first blog post addressed, which were things that had been brewing in me for a really long time, are the lack of naked body diversity we're exposed to is such a bummer in our culture because the only bodies we see are being shown as like hot, pretty much. There's nobody who's just out there not being, you know, sexualized in some way when they're naked, and then there's almost nobody out there who looks anything other than this sort of like 10% maybe of all female body types. So those were the two things I really wanted to address, and I was kind of like making the point, like using myself as a subject here of, to me it's very freeing and very liberating to be naked. Obviously it's not everybody's choice, but I do want to start the conversation in people's heads of like, why do you consider it so inappropriate or controversial, or why is it such a problem? And I actually recently had a conversation with someone where I was explaining this to her, to an actress who like has very different views, but it was like a really great conversation. And she had said something like, well, like I would make the argument that we do see a lot of that. Think about Lena Dunham. And I was like, she was the only person I could think of who has non-sexual nudity anywhere. And look at how mad people get. And I had used her in my blog post too, because she's the only one. If you kind of rack your brain for like, no, we must see non-sexual female naked bodies, right? She's the one. She's the only one.
Well, and then, so last week, you and I both got tagged on a post on Facebook. Someone took a picture, definitely imitating that other picture of Amy Schumer that was floating
Mm-hmm.
around, which again, we'll link everything up in the show notes.
Yeah.
And the conversation, which I thought was so interesting, something I had not considered before, was if a woman who's, quote, out of shape, so someone like an Amy Schumer who's a little bit thicker of a build,
Mm-hmm.
not rail thin, posts a naked picture, it's called brave.
Mm-hmm.
But if a woman who's in like acceptable shape by society standards
Uh-huh.
posts something like that, it's called attention seeking or exhibitionist or something else.
Yeah.
And so where do you weigh in? Again, there's just like a lot of layers here, so take it from whatever angle feels best to you. Where do you weigh in on that?
I loved that conversation. It also just felt like a powerful thread of like strong female opinions, which I really dig. I think that my feeling on it is, I fit a societal norm for like fitness, and kind of somewhat objective hotness. And I know that obviously that could be a lot of things. I'm not model skinny, but I'm something that people go like, yeah, I would want to look like that. So I even thought about when I was writing my blog post, hey, maybe I don't have a right to even put this out there. And I called a friend of mine who is very into sort of post-eating disorder body advocacy stuff. And we kind of talked it out. And she was like, yo, here's my perfect example. Like, I feel very, very deeply and connected to the transsexual community and that message, but that's not my message. I don't get to say that message. So your message doesn't get to be like, fat positivity, for example. You don't get to say that. That's not your fight. But what you do get to say is we all have bodies and we all have insecurities because they're bred into us. And we are all doing the best job we can, or at least, we all have the option to do a better job of working to fight fight those rules and free yourself from them and show up however you want to show up. And it's hard. So, hey, here I am. And sometimes I'm insecure and I look like this, and that doesn't make me any more or less valid. But it does mean that my fight is very particular, and I can't go out being like, love your curves when
Right.
my curves are like, they're kind of normal. Like I can say, hey, I have cellulite, but all I'm saying is, hey, I have that. You can notice that I have it. I'm not saying, like somebody else in a different body could take that in a really different direction. So to me, I do see it as like occasionally I get almost this weird guilt around like, I'm not even being brave. I look the way that people want to look, but it doesn't matter because I am in this body and I am a human and I have my own stuff and my own journey. And that's what I try to put out there.
And what I appreciate about that is so many women think if I was just skinnier, if I was in shape, I wouldn't have any of these insecurities. But like you said, insecurity as women is bred into us in a way that you'll just find something else to be insecure about, Yeah. And it's cool to separate how people feel about their body from just it being in a certain shape, size, or form. Because there's so many other reasons why a woman might feel uncomfortable in her body. And so to be just having the broad spectrum conversation. And so I had a cool perspective because now I've been both. In this moment, I'm the fattest I've ever been. I've been enjoying it for a while. Like, it's been just like kind of fun, certainly very uncomfortable too. But to realize how much my identity has been wrapped up in how I look physically. And then to go, okay, and now I'm, quote, out of shape. For a while, I felt like crappy. And then I was like, actually, I kind of like it. This is great. But then to get to a place now where I have such a desire to do physical things that it's just going to be conducive to be in better shape for. So to get back into some kind of training, but just different than the way I used to. So that's a super interesting conversation too. I'm excited. So if you're listening to the podcast, you have an opinion on this, you have a perspective, anything we said, whether it struck a nerve because you were like, F these two, they don't know what they're talking about. Great. Leave us a comment. But if you just have something to share, like your own perspective. So you've trained like hundreds of clients in person. And I know you've also, being in New York City, working in a high profile gym, you've worked with some like celebrities or like models and actresses and famous people. One of the things I just love like the humanization of all things. And I feel like you're great at that. And so can you speak on, I just think it's so valuable when people get to realize that everyone has issues. Everyone has stuff. So what do you notice are some things that are just like universal? It doesn't matter how much money someone has, where they live, what they do, etc.
God, I almost look at it like kind of everything is, but that's a very like non-helpful podcast way of looking at it. So
I guess the most
like,
common,
we all struggle
maybe.
with the same stuff. Yeah, I think just in general, everyone struggles with feeling like their worth is attached to their looks. And then that's just a really big thing to unpack. So it comes from different places. But one of the biggest things that I preach and try to practice and everything is that obsessing about how you look makes it harder to look the way you want. Your body becomes less responsive because of hormones and stress and bullshit. So in fact, it's not that you get to the body you want and then you become happy and judgment free and all that. But you can actually, in the reverse, work on becoming judgment free, or the best you can do, and your body will respond accordingly. And this is one of those things that I speak with women about, and almost everyone will go, wait, it's like that one magic vacation I had. Like everyone has a moment where they were like, wait, there was that one time where I ate pasta all day because I was in Italy and I was in love and I was so happy and I weighed less than I ever have. And you're like, right. So like maybe we shouldn't be putting so much emphasis on the stuff we're putting on. Think about every like magic moment of your life like that. And to me, that's why I do this kind of work, is going to the inner stuff first, learning to accept and embrace and love the body that you have, and knowing that it's going to be in flux for literally ever. That allows you to really kind of get to the place you want to go, and with so much less pain and with so much more gratitude, because it doesn't really work the other way, not in the long term.
Yeah, I love that. So less pain, more gratitude. I like to just write down a couple little notes so I remember things I really liked. So
awesome.
What are your ways, so physical and non-physical, that you help people to handle the physical, the non? So with the emphasis on, hey, let's lower some stress. Let's just like be a happier, better feeling human, and then the results will come too. So I know you're a huge advocate of lifting things and lifting heavy things too. But what I love too, you're all kinds of variety. I love following you on Instagram and seeing all the different things that you do. And I know you've gotten into yoga this year too, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. I want to see actually how into it you've gotten, other than just doing the poses and posting the pictures. But yes, talk about that stuff a little.
Okay, so I have been, over the last couple of years, desperately wanting to boil all this down into like, an easy peasy formula, and have failed miserably on multiple occasions.
Right.
But I think that's kind of the point, is you can't. There is no formula, or everyone would just be doing it already and it would already be a book.
Right.
So the things that I do include education on like how the body works, because there's all this misinformation out there, because health and wellness sources are all just trying to put out more content. They're not actually trying to help you. So they put out constant, frequently confusing and conflicting content, and then everyone is overwhelmed. And not only do they actually not know what to do, but now they're more stressed than ever. So you're failing on multiple levels with that.
What do you think is the worst source of that? Do you have an opinion on that? Is it magazines?
I actually put them all together in magazine and mainstream media, because at this point there is so much crossover. Like every talk show has a fitness segment. Every like news outlets are always covering this quick, easy fix to like get in shape. It used to be magazines for sure, but it is now. I mean, even like some of the worst dumbing down happens in fashion magazines who are trying to cover fitness stuff. So not only do they not have any information, or really they don't care, they just want to like be on trend because fitness is on trend right now. But like most likely the editor and person who wrote it only is reading it in shape. It's like that person is so far removed from actual information. So I've been behind the scenes on a lot of magazine stuff, and I know how bad that information is, but honestly, it's everywhere now. It's the whole thing.
So, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile like assisting with like magazine shoots and stuff like that, feeling the way you feel about mainstream media?
So this was a really big thing. And when I first started Remodel Fitness and started doing stuff online, and I would get these opportunities where people would say, hey, you're an expert. Do you mind if we use you as an expert source? And I'd be like, oh my God, of course I would love to. And they'd say, great. All we need is 3 flat belly tips, but they can't be exercise and they can't be food. We're looking for creative tips. I'd be like, well, I can't write that. That's a nonsensical question. It doesn't make it. I'm not giving you
Dear
that.
Jessi, we want you to make something up to fit into our subject line, because this
Which
is what
we've
we want
already
people
determined.
We've determined this thing. We don't really care if it's true.
But it's sketchy, so
and we
you
want to
see what
slap
we're
your
going for.
name on it, because you know what you're talking about.
So at first I would go through this whole moral conundrum, like, oh my God, can I give them 3 tips? And so a few times I would turn it down, because there are times where the question or the editor, if I really didn't trust an editor to like use my words in any kind of context that I felt good about, sometimes I would just say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to find someone else. Often I would try to do like a soft sell there, where I'd be like, oh, that's so interesting. Do you mind if I like, I'll just do one fitness one? And so the fitness one would be like lift heavy weights. And then I'd give my little blurb, and the editor would go, fine. Fine. Because if I give you a little of what you want, I can get a little of what I want in there. And now I feel like that was a better quality conversation, at least, than maybe someone else would have gone to, because they would have found an expert source willing to give them something at some point.
I had a
So
similar experience a couple months ago. You know, when people don't do their research. So obviously I have fitness stuff still all over the internet, but from years ago, like I haven't done fitness stuff since 2013. So 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. And someone reached out, oh, we love your fitness videos, and can we interview you for, it was like a pretty big source. And I kind of just played with it. I'm like, listen, if they're not going to do their research, it's not my fault. So I was like, yeah, sure.
So correct them.
Nope. So I get on the phone with this person. So like I forget. I wish I could remember what the question was, but I think she was looking for more like that kind of question, like give us 3 tips or 3 moves. And I would just talk the entire time about listening to your body. Like the most important move you could do is listen to your body.
I love that. And that's how I justified it. It was things like that.
And as far as I know, I don't know that it was ever actually used on the internet. So I don't know if it worked or not, but it was fun to be like, listen, I'm just not down for that. So
I love that. And that's kind of what it would be. And I feel like over time, I simply didn't continue relationships with the editors who really hated my answers. You know, maybe they'd run that thing and maybe I would read it later. I've read plenty of things and just rolled my eyes and been like, boy, did they take that out of context. They got what they wanted no matter what I said, you know, so that whatever, what are you going to do? And so then there's those people who just, they moved on and found other sources who gave them what they wanted, snappy tips. And then the editors who were like, whoa, oh, I never looked at it that way. Maybe we could make a piece out of that. Those were the editors who I got closer and closer with. And that's why like the woman that I work with at BuzzFeed and at Greatest, like those are the people who are like, maybe they're not fitness people. They're not like highly educated in the field, but they know what's up and they know enough to like follow that conversation and see if they can make content out of it versus coming up with snappy content and then trying to fit someone into it who knows stuff, you know?
Yeah. So if you're listening, no snappy content. We're not here for you to continue to feel bad about yourself because, and I've said this in so many different contexts, but when someone is sold something, especially when you're vulnerable, if you have just gained weight or if you have just gone through a breakup, if you're in some kind of emotional turmoil and you're thinking, I just need to lose a few pounds and I'll feel better. A, obviously it's not your only option, but B, if you turn to the snappy content sources, when it doesn't work, you usually don't go, oh, that just wasn't for me. You then beat yourself up about this thing not working.
There's something wrong with me.
That's not designed to work. It's designed to like get clicks or get attention or, sell these quick fixes. And I think at a certain point, seeking out instant gratification and then falling on your face, like how many times do people have to do that before they go, all right, maybe I'm going to consider long-term more sustainable stuff so I can stop this cycle of feeling like shit about myself every time it doesn't work.
Absolutely. And the vulnerability thing is like, yeah, whatever. Maybe you feel vulnerable anyway. Maybe you already feel like, oh, I gained this weight and I'm not crazy about it or whatever. I got out of shape because I went to grad school or whatever the thing is. But then add on top of that the fact that the thing that sells the most magazines and gets the most clicks is fear. It's fear bait. And so anything that's going to scare you into feeling like you don't belong or you're missing out or like if you don't do this thing, it'll just get worse. Or I'm writing, actually, I was just this afternoon writing a whole thing about that because that, again, goes back to like what makes your body less responsive? Stress hormones. So the more stressed you get about how unresponsive your body is, you're caught in this terrible cycle. But that cycle behooves them because they want to continue selling you stuff and getting you to click. It doesn't behoove you.
Yeah, big time. And it's so, it's insidious, it's everywhere, and it works.
It's effective.
It's effective because even when you know what's happening, like I get hooked by that stuff sometimes. And I'm like, Elizabeth, this isn't true.
I do the same thing.
And you're
sometimes I can't believe where I end up by clicking through. How did I get here?
You're like, are you kidding me right now? That's like more embarrassing than even gaining a couple pounds of like, did I really read this message long enough to end up on this page?
because you get curious because you're like, well, what if there is one trick? I mean, I know a lot of stuff, but maybe they boiled it down in a really new way.
They never have.
No, no one ever has.
No one ever has, because it's not a thing. There's a it's part of, and it sounds like just like cheesy cliche or whatever, but like the journey is part of it, right? Who you become in the process of any kind of transformation, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, is part of it. So I also know, just because I know you personally, we've done some work together, that over the last year or so, you have also studied to become a life coach. And I'm curious, now that you have deeper perspective and experience on that, on the like mental, emotional side of things and spiritual, how do you factor that in, with your physical work with people, or even just in your own experience, actually?
So I was so on the fence about doing that school because I was like, here I am at this like great gym with a great reputation. I'm becoming known as like a great strength coach in a very, what's it called? Evidence-based world, like people who are like, the science says, so that's how we know it's true. Those type of people are less inclined to give a lot of respect to, I felt this feeling, so I trusted it, and now here I am. Even if I got better results with someone doing it that way, I honestly felt like I had to hide that part of my training from my peers because, like if someone were like, oh, like that was interesting, you had that girl doing something that looked, like really hard, or maybe like the pay off what didn't make sense in terms of programming. And my answer would just be like, yeah, but it made her really happy, and making her really happy got better results at the end of the workout because she was delighted to be there and she's going to show up next week. So like these are ways that I had been secretly thinking. Mm-hmm. And I swear when I went to life coaching school, it was like just this huge thing opened up on all my secret thoughts. And I was like, oh, I get to talk about this with other people who know it's real. So it felt incredibly validating to me that the work I was already doing but kind of hiding, I can now like openly talk about. The fact that your beliefs create your behaviors, the fact that like how you feel is gonna, I mean, I knew this from already like with hormones and stuff, how you feel about yourself and things is going to create your body. But now we get to talk about it in terms of like what to do with how you feel and actually affect that directly instead of just telling someone, you should stop being so stressed, and I recommend a massage and take long baths. This way it's like, whoa, what makes you feel trapped in your life? Like that's stress right there. Let's talk about that. Yeah. And going deeper because like, yeah, sometimes massage is the right choice, but most often the stress we put on ourselves is judgment, criticism, comparison, feeling stuck, feeling like we made the wrong choice. All these things that like you can't touch with massage and soft tissue work and meditation, even, the sort of evidence-based ways of de-stressing are so flawed because they don't address them. And the school just like blew that whole thing open where I was like, I get to talk about all this now.
That's cool. So I know you personally have also gone through a couple transitions recently, like big ones. So moving out of New York City where you had been for many years, and as well as moving out of being like a full-time personal trainer, not only as like your primary source of income, but like as a primary source of identity as well.
Oh, yes.
So talk about, we have so many women in this community who are in life transitions, whether it's from I'm in a career and I want to do something that I'm much more passionate about that feeds my soul, or whether it's I'm transitioning in and out of one kind of relationship or something like that. So many transitions in this community. Yeah. I get messages from women and applications to my programs so all the time, going through so many different types of, even the micro ones. Micro all the way and up to very big things. So, and you posted something like a week or two ago about like, it's just hard. It's hard and it's crazy and it's scary. So I'd love to hear about all of it, the dark and the light and the transitions, and then let us know where you are right now with it all.
Cool. So when I left, it was like very gut impulse. It was just following something inside me that I couldn't put any real words to. So I feel like the first couple months that I left, I mean, it's only been a couple months. I guess it's been like 3 months. But at first, like the biggest thing for me was just sort of coming to grips with why I had left and kind of trying to figure that out and being like, I was really happy and I was making an awful lot of money and I was like living a really good, really easy life. So what the F am I doing? Like, I felt like I really had to just like start doing the work to figure out why that little gut feeling had been there. because I wanted to give it whatever it was. Like I wanted to be like, okay, well, I'll just go the direction that you need, whatever you are, a little gut feeling. But I couldn't like identify it. I honestly was just like, I left New York because I knew I had to. And so I kind of feel like I'm still a little bit in that, but I am getting to see now what it was about. And I think a big part of it was about wanting to soften. And in that conversation about being a woman, I think that this is a little bit of like, not to say a final stage, but certainly a climactic stage of the last couple of years of saying, I not only accept, but I am grateful that I'm a woman. Mm-hmm. And I would like to use my femininity not as something to kind of like avoid, but rather something that is actually a gift. And I don't feel that way in all aspects, but it's been more and more, and I'd like to keep encouraging that side of myself. So the softening is one of the biggest reasons and the biggest things I've had a hard time with, because what I do best is not that. I like to hustle and, like crush things and
preaching to the choir, homegirl.
And like stress, but not even stress in a way that bothered me. Like, yeah, sometimes I'd feel really overwhelmed, like when I was in school and working and all these things. Like, yeah, I was stressed, I guess, but I enjoy that. I thrive in it, and it's a part of myself that I know extremely well, so it feels very easy. But it doesn't feel fully balanced when I look at my whole being and the life I want to create. So my thought was, okay, I guess I'll just get to know that other side. And honestly, I imagined somehow, I don't know what world this would be, that this would happen, but I'd leave the city and I would just step into like this sensual, soft, relaxing side of myself, and I'd really get to know her. And then, the next year or whenever I figured this all out, I would move them together and they would blend. But that didn't happen, unfortunately. So at least not yet. So now I'm still kind of in that place of like, oh man, I just got to keep chipping away at this one part of myself. And that was kind of a rude awakening, but also valuable because, I don't know, it's all valuable. I'm having like a very odd back and forth with the whole thing. And I'd say that some of it has been the most incredible. I mean, just like, my God, gratitude pouring out of my ears. But like other times it's been so hard and I can't even really put a finger on what's so hard about it. And that makes it even worse, like I'd like to be able to be like, oh, it's this. It was hard because then I was just like, struggling in my business or whatever. That'd be great. But instead it's this because I don't know who I am or what I want anymore. And like, I'm trying to like pull things together from all these different sources and experiences. And and I don't know where it's going. Yeah. And that's weird because in New York, I knew where everything was going,
Yeah. Yeah. And that itself is a shift from masculine into feminine, right? The direct, the forward moving, the structure, the linear nature of things versus the mystery, a bit more uncertainty, being a little all over the place mentally, physically, and emotionally in different aspects. So you also shared something I love talking about things that people are afraid of because it's always so interesting, the whys behind that, but also I love learning how people face fear, how people interact with fear and navigate it. So you also shared something, again, several weeks ago about, so you don't have a driver's license yet, right?
I have one. I was a bad driver. I've been driven in 10 years.
Okay, so you have one, but you just haven't been driving. Mm-hmm. And have you been... And it was something about maybe getting to grips with that. You probably need to start driving again if you're going to live where you live.
If I'm going to live pretty much anywhere other than New York is sort of the realization that I'm coming to. And again, it's like, I don't know what reality I was living in that I was like, maybe I'll learn to drive, maybe I won't. It was just very like, we'll figure it out. But then, so I'm a logical person and I came to this conclusion easily like a year ago that I should learn how to drive again and face the fear that I have because I was in a bunch of accidents. I only drove for like less than a year when I was like 19. And I got in like 7 accidents, totaled my car, flipped in a tree, like the whole, I was careless. I also, one of the big things that made it scary for me is that, when people get in accidents, they say, oh, this happened, then that happened, and that's why. Mm-hmm. And I literally, when first I was driving, then I was upside down in a tree, I don't actually know why that happened. Mm. So I feel like the scary thing was that I didn't have even like the thought pattern to go with it. So I didn't know how to address it or make it better. And so now I'm very afraid that I'm going to get in a car and I'm going to have to just deal with it, and I'll just be whatever kind of driver I am, and I won't, like I guess my deep fear is that there is something wrong with me, right? That I can't like actually drive, that I just like maybe there's like something physically wrong with my brain, or I don't even know. But like that's not really what I think. That's what's like sitting there on my shoulder being like, you shouldn't try this.
Yeah.
But I have to, because otherwise I feel trapped everywhere I go, and that's a shitty feeling. So that was what the post was about. It was like, wow, lessons learned here. I'm very adamant about not letting fear rule my life, but I've let this one rule my life for, almost 10 years, and it's time to reclaim that. But I haven't done it yet, and obviously anything that you put off this, as much as I have put this off, there's stuff, but I am working on it.
Well, and what's cool, right, is at the moment when it gets like louder and it's at the surface, it's because it's ready to go.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. The amount of conversations I've had, or like the amount of people I've been like, hey, I'd love to do a driving lesson with you tomorrow. And they're like, absolutely. These are like, my inner circle, lovely, lovely people who aren't going to push me the next day. So then the next day when I simply just can't possibly find time, it's like this has happened a bunch over the last couple of weeks.
Oh my God. So you should hire one of those like driving coaches that like high school students who are getting their license.
That's the thing, and I'm considering it. But
with the second steering wheel and their own brake.
Yes.
Their name is probably like Norm or something like that.
Norm, obviously. Yeah, so I feel like the courage post that you're talking about too, I related or to this thought about the, what's her name? Amy, whatever, that naked photo that we were just talking about, and the whole thing about whether or not it's brave to pose without clothes, depending on how you look. I also had the realization when I was in New York, I did this naked body painting thing, and I realized that I did not feel brave at all, not once that day. I felt a lot of things. I felt alive. I felt in love. I felt like sexy and just awake and all these wonderful things. But it never occurred to me until afterwards. I honestly think it was because someone posted on Instagram, wow, you're so brave. And I was like, huh. I guess, yeah, like if I had done this 2 years ago, it would have been a very brave act. But it didn't feel that way for me in the moment because there wasn't anything that I was actively overcoming in doing it. It was more of just like playtime. And even when I posted my naked yoga post, it felt a lot more brave to me because I was scared about how it was going to be received. And it was me bearing a part of myself, literally, and also just like, the work that I do and what I think is important. So yeah. I think that ties into the courage conversation for me as well.
Yeah, because I posted, so after we were tagged and then I was reading through some of the comments on that thread about that Amy Schumer post, that was something I shared. I'm like, how interesting. I never really thought about this before, but bravery is so subjective, right? If it's doing something that I'm totally not afraid of or uncomfortable with, it's not brave for me. Might be brave for you if it's...
like, driving for you is probably not brave.
Not brave. It's not a brave act. It's super fun. I love getting in my Mini Cooper. Ever since I got my driver's license, to me, it was total freedom. It's like, oh my God, I could do anything and go anywhere, be anywhere I need to be, when I need to be there. So no, that would super not be brave for me. But for you, so brave. So how interesting that that's subjective, and how interesting to consider, if you're listening to this, the moments when you are going, oh, wow, that's so brave, seeing someone else do something, to maybe allow the inquiry of why do I think that's brave? Yeah. What's there for me? What am I afraid of there? Or is there an opportunity for me to check something out or learn something new about myself because I think that's brave? So talk to me more about, I almost forgot, but then you said yoga and I remembered. Tell me about your developing relationship with yoga.
Okay, so I almost just cut you off when you said this, like early in the conversation, because there isn't. I don't do yoga. I do not do any yoga. What I do is I Instagram browse. My friends' pages, I now follow probably like 50 or 100 yoga accounts that I really love, of people doing cool stuff, and that never just flowing. It's never like nice. It's never feminine yoga. I'm looking for like...
You're looking to muscle yourself into a handstand lotus.
To like crush some yoga. So then I browse, and when I find a place with good lighting, I always have a few poses. Like, I kind of save them in my phone. I'll be like, oh yeah, try that thing whenever you get a chance. Find some good lighting. I like try a few. A lot of them are just like, are you kidding? You thought that would work? That's an insane idea.
Can you please make a blooper reel for us?
I probably could, but I don't know how to, I'm not good at video editing, and I can't even put two things together at this moment in time.
It's so funny.
Yeah. But I honestly, I have a ton because it's me being like, and if I look at them later, because I'm always just videoing and I'll
Yeah,
take
yeah,
screenshots for
yeah.
15 seconds and I'll look at myself do it. And like, it's me thinking, it's like puzzle solving, well, okay, what about this? No, I'd have to try this. No, that doesn't work. And then I sit down and on my video, I can always just see myself sitting there just with such irritation, like the least yoga thing you've ever seen. I tried to pose, it failed, and I'm just sitting there like, this is fucking dumb. I don't know why people like this. And then I go, oh wait, what about that other one? I'll try the other one. And when it succeeds, I'm like, yes. And then that's all I need. I'm done for the day. I put up the 15 seconds. I'm excited.
So what's funny is when you do yoga, the word for like yoga posture or like the movement arm of yoga is asana. Mm-hmm. And some yogis get really sensitive when you call it a pose. They're like, it's not a pose. All right. But for you, it's straight up pose. Like, it's just exactly.
Honestly, it's like I'm doing tricks. I see it the same way that I would learn like a gymnastics trick.
That's right.
It just so happens that it is a yoga pose according to the internet.
And what an interesting indication of actually something that's rampant. There actually are 8 limbs of yoga. Don't ask me to name them. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I have a friend, Danielle Berardi Diamond. Like, she's been a yogi. She teaches yoga for many, many years. And she talks about this a lot. How with the proliferation of social media and like yoga clothing, right?
Oh yeah,
it's a lot more of like a fashion show or a pose-a-thon. Yeah, like I love yoga pants, but it turns into more of a fashion show and a pose-a-thon, and people are going, oh, I'm a yogi, but it's like, there's 7 other limbs of yoga that I have a feeling you're not practicing. And what's interesting is I always hear people talk about how people who have worked in yoga studios talk about how those are some of the most like uncomfortable, like not great culture environments they've been in. So there's just like so much out there labeling itself and hashtagging itself as yoga every damn day, right?
I mean, honestly, like I am aware of all those things. And I tried at first, I like wouldn't even let myself go there because I was like, this isn't yoga. You're mad that you can't get a pose. That's not yoga. But then I started going, and I wrote that post about it like a year ago, I guess. And I wrote it basically being like, I don't know, I'll just try a thing. And I guess, like I was mad about it. And anytime I'm mad about something irrationally, like I know there's some stuff I have to deal with. So, cause like literally my clients would be like, what do you think of yoga? And I'd be like, fuck yoga. And it was like, it didn't make any sense. I was just mad. So I was like, okay, let me see if I can like at least get this chip off my shoulder about it. And what I realized is I don't like that style of stuff because of the same reason I don't like wearing dresses and the same reason that I don't like, sitting calmly and like, scanning my body. Like these are things that I see the value in objectively, but I don't often do and enjoy and practice. And that's what the yoga thing was that I thought I would have to do. But what I realized is I can do this other thing that it's benefiting me in a lot of ways because I've gotten to know different parts of myself through this, what would I call like a 3-minute a day practice,
Yeah. And honestly, and that's the thing, at the end of the day, who cares?
Yeah.
There's benefits to everything. If you're doing something, you're getting something out of it. Who cares what someone else says, what someone else thinks? If it's not, quote, real yoga or whatever, who cares? If you like it, go for it. So my final question, anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I would have, that you want to just share?
I don't think so. That's a tough question to answer.
Yeah, so sometimes it is and it isn't, because sometimes people are like, yes, I wish you would have asked it. I'm like, great, let's talk about it real quick. So cool. Well, it was so fun to have you. I enjoy your perspectives. You know what I like about you a lot? You are so logical and rational, and obviously I am not. So it's fun. It's so fun and useful for me to engage with someone who that's how their mind works, because there's such valuable contrast there and just like great little points for conversation. So thank you so much. We're going to link up to your website, jessikneeland.com. If you're on Instagram, follow Jessi. She's one of my favorite. When you post, especially when there's like bulk to the actual words on the post, not just the picture, I'm always like, ooh, I want to read what you wrote. So,
oh yeah, because sometimes I think I really overwrite on my post.
Whatever. There's a limit. So actually, you didn't overwrite unless you hit the limit. So, and it's not your name. It's Remodel Fitness NYC.
Yes, ma'am.
That's your Instagram. We'll link up to that on the show notes as well. So, Jessi, thank you so much. For those of you listening, I hope that we gave you some cool perspectives and different ways to think about, physical movement and all kinds of things, fear, courage, bravery that we talked about today. So we'll see you later. Yes, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Energetically and physically, what I like to do when conversations aren't going super well, whether it's on the phone with someone or whether that person's in front of you, in your physical body, drop your shoulders down and pull them back, literally opening, pushing your heart space forward, and really imagine. And sometimes you might be visual, you might be more of a sensory person. So if you're visual, just imagine shooting love out of your heart. And it could be a golden white light. It could be a beautiful pink, a beautiful green. Any of those colors work, whatever feels best and most resonant for you. Imagine just shooting your love unconditionally towards this person, even though they're not reacting the way you were hoping they would have, or it doesn't really feel good, the things that they're saying. You could always love people through things. And love is always the appropriate response.